State of the race. We are 2 weeks from Election Day. I don't have to tell this next man, RNC Chief Strategist and Communications Director Sean Spicer. Hi, Sean.
Good morning.
How are you feeling this morning?
I feel good.
You do?
I do. Little spring in the air, ready to go.
So you're feeling the optimism of that the Trump campaign seems to be feeling as well.
I do. I do. You look at the numbers where we are in terms of the early vote and the absentee ballots returned. I think it gives us a lot of optimism, whether it's Florida, Ohio, Nevada, or Iowa. In each of those cases, we're seeing a lot of optimism, not just in terms of what our absentee ballot request and return is, but where the Democrats are. They're down in almost every one of those areas vis-a-vis where they were in 2012. And that enthusiasm gap that we hear about with Secretary Clinton in terms of young voters, minority voters, it's starting to show up.
I get it. So the metric you guys are using is absentee ballot requests and returns, not the polls.
Well, no, I think at some point you do have to look at where you were in 2012. So it's not just one thing. We have an unbelievable set of data in each one of those states. We have voter scores for 197 million voters. We know where voters are in terms of the process. Do they vote early? Do they vote on Election Day? Republicans generally vote on Election Day. Democrats need to do well in the early vote and the absentee ballot returns. So we look at where we were in 2012 and where they were in 2012. And in almost every case, we're ahead of where we were in 2012, and they are below where they were in 2012.
Let's look at because I think it's interesting how different the Trump camp sees it than the Hillary camp or even than CNN. So let me put up what CNN thinks are the swing states. Okay, so right now, today, the swing states, according to CNN, are Arizona, Utah, North Carolina, and Ohio. This is our map, the yellow.
Right, and I would argue that Arizona and Utah are not swing states. We're very confident in them. We've shored them up, and so I would dispute that right off the top.
Okay, now let's look at what Trump's electoral map are and where he thinks the swing states are. Nevada, Colorado, Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, North Carolina, Florida, New Hampshire, and Maine. Those are their yellow states.
Particularly Maine, too, just to be clear. I mean, Maine is a little bit of reach, but Maine, too, that second congressional district, Maine and Nebraska are the two states that divide their electoral votes by congressional district. We feel very good about Maine, too.
And why do you feel very good about Maine, too, when Clinton is up in Maine 3 points?
Well, because, again, I mean, you can be up in one part of a state and down in another, and there's different pockets. We feel when you look at Maine, too, the same way that you can do well in New York, upstate New York, and not do well in the city. I mean, there's a different makeup of different parts of the state.
So in that particular state, you're going to get the electoral votes you think that you need. Let's look at Florida. So Hillary Clinton is up there right now. You think you're going to win Florida?
Well, again, let's look at we're leading in absentee ballots requested and returned. We've got over 850,000 more Republicans that have requested a ballot than 2012. So that's close to 1 million so far. And as we head into that early vote piece of it, not just the absentee ballot, we feel very good about the number of Republicans that are either voting in person or have requested and returned an absentee ballot. And we get, you look at where the Democrats are, and that's the best sign. Polls are great. They give you a guidepost. They tell you where you're headed or with the state of the race at any moment. But at the end of the day, as we all know, votes are what win an election.
Nevada.
Yeah.
You're feeling good about Nevada?
I am.
I mean, because, again,
and you think about it, it's a state that Obama carried twice. It's Harry Reid.
Yeah. She's up 7 points at the moment.
No, again, I think when you start to look at where we are in terms of where our data shows and where we are electorally, again, the Dems are down 3,000 votes from where they were in 2012.
In terms of requests
and Republicans are up. Again, and again, that's when polls are a sample size. You take 400 or 500 people in a state and you get an idea of where they are. But when you actually can start to look at who's returning a ballot, that's what counts, because we've talked about this. The other thing that the polls show is an enthusiasm gap for Hillary Clinton and an excitement for the movement that Donald Trump represents. And that's getting translated into actual votes, requests, and returns for absentee ballots.
Back in 2012, Mitt Romney's team, as you know, famously got it wrong. So much so that on election night, they were stunned. I mean, according to reports from inside the room, that they had expected to win. Their data, whatever it was that they were looking at, told them that Mitt Romney was going to win. Are you sure that the Republican Party has fixed those metrics? Whatever
absolutely. I mean, we know. Look, we know where the state of the race is, and again, we have 14 days to go. So what we've got to see is a continuation of the momentum break our way. And we've started to see that in the last couple of weeks, not just nationally, but in key battleground states. So you can have the best data in the world and and lose. You can have the worst data in the world and win. But I think we feel very confident about our handle as far as where the race is, what we need to do going into those final days.
Let's talk about what you need to do in those final days, because the ground game, there's also a discrepancy in terms of how many staffers are on the ground in some of these key states. We have a graphic that we can look at. I mean, she, quadruples you, at least, in some of these. Look at Florida. Look at Pennsylvania. 62.
No, that's just not, but that's not accurate.
So
I mean,
what is
those
accurate?
numbers, we've got over 6,000 staffers on the ground in 13 states. I mean, so we have trained organizers that are putting in 40, 50 hours a week that have actual metrics. But at the end of the day, this goes back to this idea of polls versus votes. Voter contact versus offices. When you actually talk about the metric, how many voters are we contacting? How many are we turning out? It shows up. Again, the data doesn't lie. But hold on, because what matters is how many people are returning an absentee ballot, how many people are actually early voting. Ours are up, theirs are down.
Sure, but it also matters how many people you get out on election day.
That's right, but that's what I'm saying.
You have a fraction of the number that the Clinton machine has.
But again, I would dispute those numbers 100%. I think when you look at the number of people that we have, both paid and unpaid, that are committed on a full-time basis to getting out, knocking on doors on a daily basis, we have the most sophisticated ground game, bar none.
You do. Okay, hold on. I just want to stop you, because that's important what you just said. You have a more sophisticated ground game than Hillary Clinton, who's been at it much longer.
No, she hasn't, but that's that's not true. We've been in the field now for 3 years. We've had staffers in the field. We've documented it. The problem is they went and hired a lot of people in the last couple of months and now say, hey, we've got a huge ground game. We've been out there touting our ground game since 2013. The number of people that have been in those states, knocking on doors, making persuasion, voter contact, registering people. We've had people in all those states now going back 4 years. So I get that they just showed up and hired a bunch of people to do hourly work. We've been there for 4 years making that voter contact. But here's the important point, Allison. At the end of the day, what this matters is, does it translate into votes? And as I just told you, the earliest indicators in terms of absentee ballots and early votes are trending our way. The Democrats are down, Republicans are up, so they can talk about the number of offices all day long. But at the end of the day, the number of people who are requesting an absentee ballot, who are returning that ballot, and who are voting early are favoring us and not them.
But you're not going to win in absentee ballots. You're going to win on election day.
No, absolutely. But the point is what I said earlier. Republicans do better on election day. We've always lagged behind. Democrats have always done better on early vote. What you're seeing in this cycle is that we're catching up to them. They're not doing as well as they have in the past, and they have an enthusiasm gap. So if they can't win by wide margins, I'll give you an example. In North Carolina, Barack Obama had a 300,000 vote lead going in 2012 and lost on election day. Mitt Romney. They have to do tremendously well in a lot of these states, Ohio, Iowa. They need to be winning not just by a little, by a lot. And when we cut into that lead and when they don't do as well, that portends very well for us on election day.
No enthusiasm gap here, Sean Spicer. Thanks so much for all the energy and breaking it.